Welcome back to the Damn Parenting Podcast. My name is Eva, and I'm glad you're here with me for this one. 2/3 of mothers have never heard the word that explains why they feel like they've lost themselves. And it's not weakness, and it's not you're failing at motherhood, and it's definitely not that you're ungrateful. It's matrescence. And if adolescence gets a word and a handbook and, well, at least a decade of societal patience, why doesn't motherhood? Maybe you've seen the recent campaign by Peanut alongside Tommy Teepee in America, who are pushing to get the word matrescence added to the dictionary. Because more than 50 years after anthropologist Dana Raphael coined it, it's still not formally recognized. I mean, your phone doesn't even recognize it. But your nervous system absolutely does. And, well, this is why it feels timely. The light is stretching again, and we're creeping back towards 12 hours of daylight. Spring has that slightly audacious energy of saying, time to begin again. And last week, I was back home visiting in Ireland when I met a woman who had just entered her second trimester. She was calm and practical and ready. And I just asked her gently, have you ever heard of matrescence? She hadn't. And she looked at me with that polite, steady confidence that says, women have babies every day. I have support and I'll be fine. And she might be. Some women experience motherhood as an expansion, more tired, of course, but more efficient, but still recognizably themselves. And then there's the rest of us. The ones who feel the tectonic plates shift. The ones who wake up at 3 a.m. holding their baby and thinking, who am I now? Because matrescence, it's not just about having a child. It's hormonal change. It's neurological rewiring. It's your values shifting. It's your self-esteem wobbling. It's your confidence recalibrating. It's your entire sense of self reorganizing. And, well, the part that we really don't talk about enough is it's not healthy to define ourselves by only one identity, not mother, not carer, not partner. Your whole being, like your you-ness, it includes your values, your awareness, your confidence, your sense of power, and those things can change when you become a mother. It doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're developing. Sleep deprivation is used as a weapon of war, and yet mothers are expected to operate at full capacity while nurturing a human who needs love and safety and nourishment constantly. No wonder so many of us feel lost. You can't pour from that empty cup, and you cannot navigate a transition if no one gives you the language for it. I realized that walking away from that lady, that not everyone has the privilege of researching this, and not everyone has the time to read the books or listen to the podcast or question their identity. Education takes space. Support takes space. Reflection takes space. And that's why conversations like this matter. This episode, one of the early deep dives from 2 years ago, is a conversation with Dr. Naomi Gibson about the identity shift in motherhood, about matrescence, about losing yourself, about redefining yourself, and about understanding that change is not failure. There's no normal way to move through motherhood. Some women stay steady, and some of us, well, we have to dismantle and rebuild. So if you've ever thought, I don't recognize myself, or why didn't anyone tell me about this? This episode is for you. Let's talk about becoming. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Damn Parenting, your English-speaking parenting podcast from the Netherlands. As always, we are your hosts, Eva and
Maren.
And today we're welcoming back our famous resident psychologist, Dr. Naomi.
Hello.
Hi. Today we're actually going to be talking about identity and identity shift in motherhood. And personally, I'm going to kick this one off. I definitely lost my identity once I had my child. Now, obviously, it was also COVID. So we all kind of were very much beside ourselves, kind of trying to figure out our own place and what was going to happen in our world. And we're bringing in new life. So we were all a bit unaware or unsure of what's going to happen. But I know I definitely gave up absolutely everything of who I was to raise a baby in COVID and going through the struggles of breastfeeding, going through the struggles of being in a building renovation, going through the struggles of not seeing family for a year. It was quite a lot. And so since then, I've known Maren since we were actually pregnant. And Maren's someone who I always could rely on to be in contact with me and also kind of be
she was having a life. She was able to leave the house and she was like, come on, we're going to do this. We're going to get gelato from Massimo again. Come on. And that was not something that was very easy for me. And I completely lost myself, basically, having given birth and going through the struggles. So that's 3.5 years ago. And I'm not going to lie, like, I'm still trying to figure out. I'm still trying to claim. I'm still trying to find a title, maybe. I don't know. So today, Dr. Naomi hopefully is going to give us another free therapy session and help us look at this identity in motherhood, loss or finding or sourcing, however that's going to be. How are we going to kick this off? What's the first question we should be asking?
Well, I think we will want to dive in before we talk about identity. I think we need to a little bound it in what is identity even from a psychological concept and why is it so important for us humans or mothers? Get a little closer the circle. Why is this such a big question within us and why are we trying to search for this identity so much? So I guess this is a good starting point to talk about what is identity and why does it impact us so much.
Yeah. Well, everyone has an identity. It's sort of a, perhaps you could say a distinctive set of qualities or traits or, maybe akin to your personality, the things that make you you is part of your identity. And I think when we're talking about identity, we're thinking about the sort of continuity of things, the sort of your selfhood that maybe your context can change, your country can change, your becoming a parent can change, but there's sort of a you-ness. That's what we're talking about with identity. And then that's also quite intrinsically linked to self-esteem, sort of the way you feel about yourself and the kind of self sort of knowing and confidence that comes with that. And all of those things are like put inside a snow globe and shaken up when you become a parent because there's just context change, body change, everything. And that's why I think there's such a big kind of identity shift in motherhood and parenthood. I know we're going to come from a sort of motherhood perspective today, being 3 mothers, but it's definitely something that both parents experience, that identity shift.
What I find so hard with this finding this new identity and getting into this new role is, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, that the child constantly changes. So everything constantly changes. So it's not like something where, okay, this is the end goal that I'm working towards. And if I've reached that, then I can get comfortably and I can keep working with this. But it's this constant change of I have to adapt, I have to reassess, I have to so this is I think the hard part about this whole growing into this role and growing into this identity, developing this flexibility of the mind of like, okay, this is how it worked now for 6 months and now I'm comfortably, but oops, everything's gonna be upside down again. So I need to reassess, I need to rechange. And I think this is the big thing that I struggle so much with, that there is continuity, but also so much flexibility and change the whole time. So you're constantly evolving in this whole, trying to find yourself and trying to land your principles. I guess you can only establish somewhat like basis boundaries or basic things that keep you going, but all the things around constantly change, and that makes it so hard for me, at least.
Yeah. And a concept that I talk about a lot in therapy is about sort of your values, that you-ness, that things, your reason for doing the things the way you do. And those things are pretty continuous. It's like a sort of compass point in the direction that you're traveling. And there might be different sort of goals along the way or different sort of things that kind of hinder your progress on that travel or help you along. But it's sort of, that's the direction you're going. So I often encourage people to think about, what is important to you? What's your value? Do you have a value of being perhaps fun? Do you have a value of kindness? Do you have a value of adventure, spontaneity, whatever it is? And then your identity often really sort of works alongside that to make those things true, even if your context and the situation you're in is not quite compatible at that moment.
Is there a piece of paper with this that we can actually look at now and tick off and kind of calculate this? Do you have a recommendation?
In terms of values, I could find a link. But there's loads. There's the theory it comes out of is acceptance and commitment therapy. And it's sort of is the idea that these values are so core to what we do. And there's a sort of an exercise I do with clients sometimes of going through all of the values as they're known, of about sort of maybe 50 or so, and sort of people know immediately which values they have. It's not something you have to think about at all. It's like, oh yeah, kindness, that's for me. Oh, generosity, yeah. Fun, whatever it is. It's sort of a very core knowing that you know what you believe in, what you stand for, what matters to you.
So that link will be in our show notes.
Yeah.
Do look. Can we ask, how does the process of becoming a mother typically impact a woman's sense of identity and self-concept?
I mean, massively. What you were saying before, Eva, you're having to work out yourself in this new role, having to look after somebody who, they're there all the time needing something from you. So there's the sort of physical and emotional demands of that changes everything. Have you guys heard of a matrescence as a phrase?
Yep.
Yeah. Have we spoken about it on this before?
No,
Not sure.
But it's such a big topic that we're like, oh, yes, this is this big topic that at one point we'll address. But
yeah, well, maybe we can lightly address it now. It's basically the acknowledgement through research and like a growing movement in sort of social sciences, really, of acknowledging that going from being a non-mother to a mother has massive emotional, psychological, physical, and brain changes, as well as cultural shifts and group belonging stuff. And that change is called matrescence. And it's sort of akin to adolescence in that there's a period of time where all of these changes take place that also comes along with a sort of discomfort and awkwardness. I mean, if you remember being, I don't know, a 14-year-old in social situations, it's almost painful to look back on sometimes, the kind of awkwardness that you might have felt, or sort of not knowing your identity in that sense. And I don't think I've met a mother yet who hasn't experienced that sort of, who am I? What does this even mean to be a mum? My body's changed. I'm having to perhaps feed somebody from my body, and all of these sort of things, as well as the kind of massive cultural expectations and the load on mothers to be perhaps a certain way, or at least we might perceive that we need to behave a certain way. And that whole journey change has got a name. It's matrescence. And I, for one, found it very reassuring hearing about that and learning about it, just being like, okay. I'm not mad. This is a thing. I'm supposed to feel so uncomfortable. I'm supposed to question my identity. It's
even as mothers, we're going to go through the spots, the hair loss and everything else. It's just a different format instead of just the teenage part. Unfortunately, we go through a very different aspect, I guess, of it. Yeah, because that came out, I think it was the 60s or 70s was actually when it was first formalized. And it's only really in the last, it looks like 5 years or even not even 10 years that it's actually really started coming in. And I've noticed it's only in social media, maybe probably in the last 2 years, I think I've noticed the word comes up here or there.
Yeah, which I think speaks to a sort of woeful lack of energy in sort of women's studies, women issues, all of that. The research, it was sort of coined by an anthropologist in the 70s, Dana Raphael, and she sort of found this phrase, saw that it was happening, but then didn't get the kind of impetus from, academic institutions where research takes place to kind of bring it forward. And you're right, it's only in a sort of the last 5 or so years that it's becoming part of a more common day sort of parlance around identity and motherhood.
It's unfortunate that some research projects, when you have 2 additional letters in a project, unfortunately, it doesn't get funding. And those 2 letters usually are the W and O in front of the men. And once you have those 2 letters, you're not going to get any funding, apparently.
Yeah, well, hopefully that's a shift. But yeah, historically, that has absolutely been the case, because most of the universities, looking back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, were run by men. These institutions it wasn't deemed so crucial to look at these things. So hopefully that's shifting.
Yeah, just half the population.
Is there then research about fathers? Is there such thing? Because I'm
no.
like, of course.
No.
So what, fathers don't go through this process, or what?
Don't forget, Mary, like when we had a chat a while ago, you were actually even questioning if men had guilt, because you were kind of like, no, they just get up, they go to work. Like, I mean, that's how society in general has placed it, I guess, on us. So why would they research men when they're like, no, this should not affect you. You get back to work.
One thing that just really helped me and understanding this whole process was your analogy with the adolescence, and thinking back how we grow, and we have these 7 years of growing into this adult, and that makes so much sense when we now put it on this motherhood journey. And I remember like feeling a teenager, you figure out the world, you test your boundaries, and that's exactly what you do when you're a mother. You test, okay, how far can I push it, or how far can I push my own boundaries, or how flexible can I be? And we also do irrational things sometimes, like teenagers, like, okay, this needs to happen now. So yeah, that's very interesting and makes it a little more understandable for me what's happening, because in this feeling I can tap back into and be like, yeah, I remember this. I also remember this in my motherhood journey where I felt so, where am I? Where's my sense of belonging? What am I supposed to do? And also this whole rebellion that kicks in at one point when you, towards your own parents also, when they come up and, no, this is not how I'm going to parent. This is not how I'm going to raise my, same conversation, just with different topics. That's a good comparison, that we have gone through this. And now it's this other layer and this other human being that we have to deal with.
It's
also
a real evolution.
Yeah.
And I find it so normalizing of the challenges that I see it. I see it in the women that I work with in one-to-one therapy and group therapy, of just this sort of who am I moment that comes in motherhood, and just, how can we be really compassionate to ourselves? This is, you wouldn't look back on your 14-year-old self and say like, oh, what is she doing? She's making so many mistakes. You would be sort of perhaps a bit kind of kinder and say she was learning and growing and evolving. And the same is true in motherhood. You're learning with your child or children how to be this new version of yourself.
Something you just brought up there, Maren, was, well, two things. One, you were talking about, going through all this. It actually made me realize mom rage is the same as our teenager age then. And mom rage is something that is so like pushed below. No one wants to admit it. It's a very shameful thing that we go through. But again, it's like being a teenager and you have this rage and you can't control it. But it's like, oh, you're a teenager. We'll excuse that. But as a mom, it's a shame instead of an excuse now.
And also, now that I think about this rage, especially, and going back to teenagers' hormones are all over the place. And that's the same for us. Oh my God. Thank you for bringing this whole thing up. But being a teenager makes so much sense to me now. Like, thinking back, like, yes, I was, especially when you're breastfeeding and you're just giving birth, like the whole hormonal shift that comes with it. And I remember this rage. And I've said this in also previous episode, that I was sitting there like, what is this? Why am I so filled with rage and uncontrolled emotions? And then I bought this online course, Mom Rage. I never actually then got to it, but I remember this topic, and also it did feel a little familiar. Now I know from where, and funny.
And often rage and anger generally comes from a sort of unmet need or a sense of powerlessness. And that is absolutely a teenager, if you want to go out or you don't really have power. And a toddler, indeed. And also a mother, a parent, where, you might want to get some space. You might want to, even this morning, I was trying to set up this podcast equipment. I've got my little 2.5-year-old, grabbing onto my leg, chasing me. It felt like I couldn't get any space. And I felt so furious. And it's just that sense of powerlessness that I need to do something. I can't do something because of my new role, this new identity as a mother. And all of these things kind of clash and collide. And I think that's, I think it's a sense of powerlessness often that comes, I think.
Yeah. Sad part is that back then you could scream at your parents. You can scream at your daughter.
You can still scream at your parents. You just have to ring them up and just be like, ah.
I guess your partner becomes your parent figure then, I guess. At least in our household.
The other thing is, when you don't have mom rage, I guess it is, there could also be the shutdown experience, which is something that I tend to experience as well, which is when, exactly like you were mentioning, Naomi, it's like you're trying to do something and then your child's there. And obviously you're not going to be, I don't know, some animal in the wild where you're like, kick them off and just keep walking off kind of thing. But we'll stop, we'll turn around. Well, we're there for our child. I know my husband has definitely said to me is like, you just shut down and give everything to your child. Like, you don't think about what needs to be done, your normal life. If you need to have a shower, if you need to get food, you just stop everything you do and you turn to the child, and then that's it. And it's like, that was the thing for me, was about the loss of identity. It was a case of, it's like, I get furious, but I don't get furious. I get shut down because I don't deal with those emotions. They don't process, and they just kind of, everything just shuts down. And I'm just like, okay, I don't know what that word is, but
it feels helpless, perhaps. This sort of, well, there's no point, so I can't carry on with what I need to do. I'm just helpless to this situation, perhaps. That would be my interpretation.
Well, it's not really a helpless thing. It's the way I actually deal with any tantrums with my child as well, is the fact that I just shut down and I become like empty. So the thing is, I try to then regulate the emotion of whatever's happening. So they can't feed off my energy because they can't sense my energy. So I just shut everything down. And that's kind of what happens. And I don't know what it is, but it's just a case of anytime they're like, oh, I need your attention, everything just stops and I turn around. So when I hear about mom rage, I've only, and I could probably count it on my hands and still have some fingers left over, ever experienced that. But on this side, it's not the mom rage, it's the total shutdown.
Yeah.
That I experience daily.
And that psychologically, we would say that's the difference between hyper and hypo arousal. Hyper being like more of an active event, like a screaming, losing your temper, slamming, something sort of active. And the hypo being more perhaps passive and shut down and just like, I can't deal with this. I'm going to just, perhaps you internalize the feeling or walk away, or something that's sort of the arousal, so-called in psychological terms, is different. It can come from exactly the same situation in a different context, or different people are sort of more inclined to one way or the other.
Yeah. And it always stems from people's own background, personal experiences, and this day that they've had, every variable. Yeah. So you were talking there about like, you actually deal with this a lot with your own moms, with your own clients as well. As our international families are here, as you were talking about, living in a different country, a different city, with a different language, with different everything really, we're in a different society, essentially. And we're making our own villages here, our own community. We're all part of something different. How does societal expectations and these cultural norms, and we're not in a cultural norm because we're now trying to formulate our own within our own community here. How can we then contribute to the identity shift that new moms are going to go through?
I think it just makes it a whole lot complicated. As with every subject that we've covered on here, there's just the added layer of living in a culture that's not your own, or being in this sort of its own kind of international culture sometimes. And yeah, there'll be perhaps different cultural norms around the sort of expectations of motherhood, around what you do or don't do, working, not working, types of food, to give kind of concrete examples, but also, yeah, perhaps you've got a partner that's from a different country and culture as well, and then you're both living in a different place. Basically, it's just a massive clash and complicated thing to understand. And I think that's why it's quite important to come back to this sort of consistency, these values, perhaps, or however you want to think about it. What's the you-ness that's going to help you through this evolution, this matrescence? What do you value in a family, in yourself? Like what's going to stay mostly consistent even while everything is changing?
I'm just thinking, is it one of those things we're going to print up this values sheet and we're going to have it beside the mirror, and that something we have to look at every single day to remind ourselves?
No, not in fact, because you know them already, right? They're your selfness. It would take a minute for me to work out perhaps what your values are, because you already know them. They're there. You're true to you. It might just be that the things in your context at the moment you're not able to sort of live fully to that value, but you don't need reminding.
Maybe we just need the words.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
So that would kind of be more of a framework that we can work with, that you're going to give us this link that we can actually link to, and we're going to check out all these different values. And that's going to kind of hopefully help support some of us listeners to kind of be like, okay, this is my value. Maybe it's shifted since prior to having a child. Now it's this way. And it's always good to kind of realign and check in. So that's essentially your new identity.
Yeah. I don't know. Is it your new identity? I think it's just the acknowledgement that identity can shift and change. And, you might belong to different groups, or, have different beliefs since becoming a parent, and, be part of this international community, whatever. And all of those things contribute to your identity. And all of those things are in flux in motherhood or becoming a mother. So to just kind of to be accepting that identity is a changing thing.
Just like everything else in motherhood, right? Changing diapers, changing tantrums.
Yeah. I mean, for me, a big part of my identity that shifts is I feel quite kind of radicalized. I don't know whether that's the word. Radicalized or galvanized by my experience of motherhood, in that I think I would have in my 20s or whatever looked at care work and looked at motherhood as being easy. I think I really had this thought that, that was the easy way, that you had these workers and you had people at home and that was easier. My understanding has, of course, changed so much. And I think it's really shifted my identity into, wanting to support mothers in the work that I do, feeling really passionate about, equality in the workplace and in all of these things around family life. And it's sort of, it's kind of energized and radicalized that part of my identity, kind of given it some oomph and purpose. I don't know whether you've had a similar experience.
What I had was a very harsh waking up to when I didn't have a child yet. I was dreaming of this. I always had this motherly identity in me. And I thought, okay, if I have a child, then I can fully live this and I can totally indulge in it. I will love doing all of that. And then I was becoming a mother, and I'm still now I know becoming a mother or shifting my identity within that. And I noticed that what I thought will fulfill me and will make me so happy actually didn't. And then I was lost. I was like, well, now I am a mother, but why am I not happily over the moon? Why am I not enjoying this so much? Why can I not find my fulfillment in this care work and in all of that? And when I was working paid work, I thought, oh, I can't wait to not do this anymore. And then when I didn't do it, I was like, to do it again, because this actually, then looking back, I saw that I really needed this for my personal identity, that I still need and I still want this outside validation that you have in the outside of home workplace, and you get all these recognition of your talent, you get you can grow, and you have all this stuff that you have in a paid work environment. And I was very surprised to find that out about myself. And then it was a big shift to, in order for myself to be happy and to be sane, I need to go back into this environment. And I've luckily found a way where I can do what I love to do, and I can combine all my qualities within that workplace now. But that was a harsh realization, because I was really trying to make it work and try to talk to myself like, well, now you have everything you wanted, and now you have what you dreamed of, and now you have everything that you picture that you want to. And then I was sitting there and asking, why can I not enjoy it? Why am I not happy with it? And this was like the harsh reality of, yes, I am a mother, and I am also, everything else. And how can I fit this within the mother identity now? And that was really a big waking up for me.
Yeah, I'm certain so many people can relate to that as well. The sort of want for something, or the idea that you could pin your identity on this something, and then it feels, not satisfying in the way you expected, or not actually, or that perhaps we were sort of speaking about the identity is made up of so many things, that if we just put it into one pot, in the same way as you just put your identity into the work pot. I'm sure we've all known people that are like, I'm a lawyer and that's all I do, and I work 80 hours a week and that's my identity. Whereas that's not flexibly psychologically healthy either, in the same way as if you were only in your motherhood identity and didn't also enjoy nature and sports or whatever. It's too much pressure perhaps on that one thing.
And it also helped me so much realizing that in order to live the picture that I had of myself as a mother, and the way that I want to parent and the way I want to be a mother, needs this other input. And I can only be the mother that I want to be if I also have this outside identity. And that was the big thing that I didn't realize, that I need something else to become the mother that I want to be. Because I thought, well, I'm just going to be the mother that I want to be, right? I'm just going to do it. But I didn't notice what goes into this recipe to actually being the person that I want to be. And that was a big, realization that I had, that mother, you just don't become the mother that you want to be, but what makes it that you can live this true identity. And now I know I am happy working outside the home. I am happy being in this other professional environment. And that makes me then the mother that I want to be.
Yeah. I think that's the matrescence, isn't it? That's the evolution. That's the working it out. That's the trial and error.
Yeah. And that's also when we spin it back now to the adolescence part, that also as a teenager, you think, I want to be working in this profession. And then you realize, well, actually, no, this is not how I want. Oh, and then you are in this profession, and you're like, oh, I didn't know that it's going to be like this, but then I'll just change. Yeah, you can't just change your child, or you can't just change being a parent, but you can't just walk away from that job. But now the realization of, oh, this isn't how I thought it's going to be. And then you need to change the parameters.
Can I ask, are there any specific challenges or conflicts that arise between like a mom, the pre-existing identity to the new identity as a mother? Is there any titles as such that a psychologist will be able to say, this is typical? Like Maren was saying, it's a case of, oh, I'm such a nurturing mother, this is exactly what I'm meant to do. And then it's a case of you become a mother and after a while you're like, oh, damn, I need to work outside the home. Like I need that. That is also my identity. Is there many of these kind of things that kind of arise typically in mothers?
I think all of these things are typical and common. I don't know whether there's particular sort of phrases or anything like that to explain that, but I think, yeah, just an identity shift as such, like a learning about yourself and evolution. Yeah, perhaps there are words to put on it, but I don't know what that would necessarily be.
So if there's this evolution, as it were, and shift, can we ask them what role does self-care then play then in fulfilling the adjustment to this new identity?
Yeah, I'd say self-care plays a massive role. And often when I'm thinking about self-care, I'm thinking about self-compassion, that kind of, self-care is often have a bath, put a candle on. Sure, that's nice. But self-compassion is the sort of true, authentic kindness to yourself. And that is so crucial when you're going through all of these shifts, this identity shift, and to just be able to say like, yeah, it has a word. It's matrescence. It has lots of people who can relate to it. All mothers can relate to this change, and to actually be like deeply kind to yourself when you're struggling, or when you perhaps, like Maren was saying, when you're at home with your baby, but you feel like, I feel like I need to be at work actually. And sort of, does that make me a bad mum? No, it makes you somebody learning about yourself in this new context. And yeah, a sort of a deep compassion for yourself for this change, I think, is the biggest self-care that you can do. And to talk to other people, connect with other people, that's also a big part of identity, is a sense of belonging and belonging in groups. And I mean, that can be literally like friends and connections you make, but it can also be, reading books that you connect to, having Instagram accounts that are speaking to you in some way, something that's sort of making you feel like this shift and change is normal, needed, okay.
When you talk about self-compassion, one very beautiful thing a couple of years ago that I've come across is that one of my mentors said, you know what? You need to learn how to dance with your dragons instead of fighting them all the time. So I think that is very beautiful when we have all these things creep up, crawl up, instead of pushing them away. Like, yeah, taking them by the hand and dancing with them and figure out the rhythm and figuring out how can we address them and how can we see them and pay attention to them, and yeah, be self-compassion to those parts that pop up. So I thought,
and if it's a dragon, you might get burnt or hurt,
exactly,
or scared.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a really nice analogy for it.
Yeah, so I thought that has given me a lot of gentleness with myself, and yeah, like you said, compassion, that they're a part of me and I have to take them by the hand, answer them, and maybe figure out a new side. And if I spin them around, I might see something that I haven't seen before that I can then use and turn into something that is serving me instead of pushing me down.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just reflecting now on episode 16 when we were talking about festive reflections. We were talking about going back to our home, really, or our family, and we're going to visit them with our children. When we talk about like we're bringing back our child, we are a parent. We're raising them in Amsterdam or somewhere in the Netherlands, and we're here away from home and we're raising a child. But how do the relationships with our partners, but also family members and our friends back home, influence this identity shift in mothers? Because they're not present with us as we're going through this shift. And then the festive reflections, episode 16, when we go back, it's like we're working on this identity here. When we go back home, it's like, oh, yeah, it's like I have to then still work on another aspect of being a mother, but in my family who haven't really seen me daily raise this child and can't identify as me as a mother.
Yeah, it's complicated, right? It's added like a whole other layer to it. And I often see, which is so akin to teenagehood actually, of when I remember getting really into a band and I really liked them and I bought a t-shirt, I went to the gigs and stuff. And then there was a friend who I'd not seen for a while. She was kind of a family friend. I saw her again 6 months later or something. She was like, you like them, you don't like them, you like this band or something. And the sort of how confronting that can be, to be like, do I like them? I mean, I think I do, but she's saying I don't. Who am I? This identity shift. And that's something I see a lot in new mothers, of the sort of, you might be kind of working out who you are in this new role and sort of adapting to the changes. And then you get these external people, partners, friends, family you've not seen in a while, that you can kind of hit up against that new reality. That can be a really, really hard feeling if you're trying to work out something in yourself or you feel vulnerable in this new identity. So again, I think it just comes back to a kind of a self-kindness to be able to be like, yeah, I'm evolving and changing and learning, and I'm okay with that. And you can kind of introduce other people to that new part of you as well, and change and adapt. And yeah, that's not to say that it might not feel strange. It definitely, oftentimes people find the sort of becoming a parent with their own parents such a challenging thing, for their parents to see them as the parent, not the child anymore. And we've spoken about this before, but how those sort of layers of identity can get really kind of confused and messy and chaotic. And it's why returning to family homes, as it were, can feel so exhausting and confusing, because of all those identities kind of clash and come into one. Yeah, it's not easy.
One comment on this, that when you let this, like when you realize that you can't live, or you don't want to live up to your imagination of what this is going to be, that it always feels like a failure. Oh, I thought this is what I'm going to be, or this is how I'm going to do it. And then, like you said, reality hits, and then you have to give it up because you realize, oh, actually, this totally doesn't work. But sometimes you're so stuck with this idea, this is how I wanted to do it. And then it feels like giving up and failing and not being able to fulfill this dream and idea that you had without all the factors in play. And especially also when we go then back to our parents, when I know that before I said, oh, this is how I'm going to do it. This is how I'm going to do it. And then my mother is like, oh, I thought this is how you're going to do it. And then you have to defend this, and you're like, but I'm not saying, I'm just
Modern
realizing
parenting.
I'm just realizing this doesn't work for me. And then really standing up and not seeing it as a failure, but seeing it as a fluid transition, and like, oh, okay, well, this is reality. So now I need to adapt my dream of how I thought it's going to be.
Yeah, and that's kind of coming back to being flexible and being kind with yourself, that, yeah, it's not a failure to change. It's a acknowledgement that you need to change, and that's okay.
I'm just in my head here thinking, like, the most I'm taking out right now is the fact that we have to be constantly flexible and evolving right now. Because when you were saying something there, Maren, about like, you have your ideologies and it's actually not working out. And then you go home. In my head, just personally speaking, it's like, I have these ideas of things I actually really do want to do. Like, I want to be going to Amsterdam Sabas every weekend. I want my child to be out in nature and, exploring the world or whatever. Honestly, I'm tired AF. I'm not going to make it to Amsterdam Sabas. It's too far for me to cycle. I don't know if we're going to make it there. If it's rainy, I get moody. If whatever's happening, and I'm not doing what I really want to do because I'm so tired. It's like there's so many variables that are involved, even trying to even get my child dressed, let alone out the door on time, let alone what the weather is, if we're going to see someone or not, how we're going to eat, what the day's going to be. Even just that one thing that I'm like, that's the kind of mom I want to be. And I'm not even reaching that. I'm kind of like, but that's what I want to be. But then I'm not reaching it. And I'm kind of, when you're saying about the whole flexibility and evolving, I keep accepting it, but I keep going, not now, not right now, but like maybe later, like maybe in the summer with better weather. But I think many of us kind of feel that, going to the beach, I still have yet to bring my daughter to the beach. And when I hear these moms going, oh, sure, we just had a great day out at the beach. I'm like, how did you get there? Like, how did you really get there?
We rented a car. We rented a car. That's how we get there.
No, but it's like, how did you get your child out? How did you deal with the sand? How did you deal with like all these, like, I'm just so overwhelmed when I hear these people telling me, oh, we did this day trip, we did this. And I just feel so failing the fact that I'm like, oh, but that's what I really want to do, but I'm not making it there. And that's also a struggle I have, is like my idea that I really want to be this mom, and everyone else, it feels like, is doing it, and I'm not. And it's through fatigue or child or weather, whatever it might be. And that's also a struggle that I have with trying to hit an identity I want to be, but I'm not reaching. Naomi, help me out.
Values again. Yeah, I think if we think of a value as the compass point and then the sort of direction of travel, I think what you're saying is that there might be a value for you of being present with your child or attentive to their needs in that moment or whatever. And you're noticing that to have that value, it's not yet going to be possible for you to get to the beach or whatever, that actually you are living in line with your values, because what you're doing is staying with your child, with your energy levels, with hers, and being present, if perhaps being present is a value for you.
Yes.
And then there'll come a time in X amount of time where actually that presentness with your child could take you to the beach. And that would be a nice day and it wouldn't feel overwhelming. But it might be right now that if you were at the beach, it was sandy, you were overwhelmed, then you wouldn't be able to be present with her because you would be, I don't know, worried about the travel, worried about sand, whatever it is. Does that make sense? And that kind of is a kind of self-compassionate way to look at it. I'd be like, yeah, I'm literally doing the best with the resources I have in this moment to live true to my value of being present with my child.
Yeah, it's just, I do feel like there's a lot of us parents who, like, especially people on Instagram, and we always go back to social media here, like with all these filters of perfection. And it's like, you know, when Maren's like, oh, we went to the beach or whatever, I'm really like, wait, what? And then this other one, oh, we went to Amsterdam, we went to Dima Park, like we went to the Bird because it's a perfect place for kids. And I'm like, no, it's not, because there's nothing else to do. Like, I'm just so conflicted and I'm like, what's wrong with me that I'm not able to make it there and make the most out of it where everyone else tells me it works for them? And I'm always kind of like, well, I want to be an outdoorsy person. I'm lazy as AF, but I mean, like, I want to be that person. I want my child to be brought up in nature and all the rest of it. But, oh, it's so hard.
And I think it's very interesting what Naomi said there, in this, like, that your unconscious mind is fulfilling your value of, oh, I want to be present, but this is how it looks for me. And your unconscious mind already knows, oh, no, hell no, Eva's going to be completely out of herself if we drag her to the beach. If we make it work that she's at the beach, we cannot live the value of being present because everything is going to be so overwhelming that the core value of being present with your daughter is not there anymore. So isn't that nice that you're protecting yourself from that harsh reality and that harsh feeling of failure? And this is, I think, the whole thing, that how can you are actually living, your value with being present, and how does it look for you? And it might not look for you going to Amsterdam Balls, going to the beach, or doing whatever, but it might look to you, we're going to the library, we're going, I don't know, to the playground. Like, how can you live your value with your environment that's possible for you, where you don't have all these factors that, because of your personal setup, will completely put you out of order because it's just too much. It's just too many impacts, or like too many noises and stimulations and all of that. So isn't that nice of your unconscious mind, that it keeps you inside to live your core value?
Well, I'm glad one part of my brain's working. Can I ask you, Naomi, as someone with 2 children, are there differences in your identity shift from going from a first-time mother to someone now becoming a second-time mother?
Yeah, massively. And I think that the idea is the matrescence happens again with another child because you're a mother in a different way. And that was my experience. They were completely different babies. The second was he cried a lot more, which really kind of overstimulated me. I found that very, very overwhelming experience. So I was a new version of myself with 2-year-old and a baby, trying to sort of manage that and really keeping those, talking about not going to the beach, like keeping expectations really low to sort of manage how can I stay in this moment with the 2 of them. So giving myself a lot of grace when I could, and other times trying to for that. But I think the shift is definitely there. And then the shift to now they're both a little bit older. I mean, they're still young, but they're not babies anymore. So then I'm noticing a different way of parenting, a different identity in motherhood, one where I can go and work more. I could go on little weekend trips here and there, and I can find a different way of relating to friends and stuff, as well as being present with them when I'm with them. So I think it's a constantly evolving thing. And from speaking to people who are grandparents as well, there's your experience of motherhood is always kind of evolving as you're growing and changing, and then perhaps your children have children, and then it's an almost constant evolution, I think.
I mentioned earlier there about the social media and these filters and everything else. Can we reflect then on like the perception of motherhood in the media through social media or even TV shows or whatever? How does that impact the identity shift that we experience by mothers? Because I genuinely feel like social media is to blame for quite a high percentage of the mental struggles that mothers will go through, because they just see these clean houses, beige aesthetics, children with no vomit on them, that they eat their own food, they eat everything. They're the amazing eaters, and they do sign language, and they're already talking and doing maths at the age of 2. And it's just putting this extreme pressure on us. And it's a case of, is this also impacting us and our identification then? Like, are we trying to then add these values which are not ours? Or are we downplaying the values which are ours because of this?
Yeah, I think you one will be influenced consciously or unconsciously by expectations. And that can be kind of patriarchal expectations of what mothers do or don't do, or literally from seeing somebody's account on Instagram and what they're doing. And all of these feed into one psychologist called it the super mum myth, the sort of you have to be a certain way and have certain feelings and all of that to be a good mother, or at least that would be the myth. All of that feeds into identity, because perhaps if you're not feeling that way, or you are struggling, or you want to return to work or whatever it is, if you're measuring yourself up against this super mum myth, then you're always going to fail. And what I see a trend of on social media is either these, as you were mentioning, these sort of beige perfect situations, or a sort of pendulum swing into I hate this is awful, pass the wine kind of vibe. Mm-hmm. And I don't think there's enough in the middle. I mean, hopefully things are sort of growing in the middle, which is just like a realistic ambivalence sometimes about your identity shift and about parenthood, that it's like, yeah, I love it, I love my child, this is great, oh hang on, this is really hard, and just sort of that normal nuance of it. And that's because social media and stuff doesn't like nuance, does it? It doesn't like gray, it's black or white. But I think that's really important. And I think it's really important to be able to get that from whoever, from your friends or sister or whoever's just kind of the grey, and to be able to work that out as part of your identity in motherhood.
If there are any listeners out there who know any grey Instagram accounts, could you please drop them in our Instagram so that we can actually browse them?
Yeah.
So I think we're going to wrap it up here, but I just had one more question about identity and our social aspect as international families in themselves. We spoke about like joining groups or going out, having activities or something. Is there something that it's a melting pot here of cultures. And so like sometimes it's a case, and I think we have spoken about it before, where it's a case of we mix with so many different cultures that it puts so much pressure on us to be like, oh, I love this about your culture, and oh, I want to do that. And then you're putting so much pressure on yourself about this. Obviously, our world is a rainbow. And so it's always a great thing to expose yourself and your child as well to all these people. But is there something that we should be really protecting, or not projecting, but like, is there something that we can be doing with our child to also encapsulate our own culture? Because on raising bilingual children, Eowyn was talking about actually having play groups of your own national language, or your mother language, as it were, so that your child can really encapsulate your culture with their language and food or music or however it is. Is there something that we can also do as well for our identity? We joined someone who, I don't know, I was going to say rug making. Don't ask me why, but like you go to a rug making class because it's like, this is my value of spending time and being creative with myself. Maren knows I really want to do a rug making class, by the way. But it's just this thing that it's like, is this something then that would help us, like as moms, like to meet other moms with the same value who want to make a rug or make candles or whatever it is? Is this going to be of benefit to us and to our our identification, our title as mother or as family member?
I think you know the answer. I think it's yes, isn't it? You do. That does make you have a sense of belonging, to be with people who have a similar interest, similar language, eat similar food, go to a certain place to pray. Like all of these things make us feel like we belong. And that sort of part of our identity is, I guess, what's the word? Nurtured. Yeah, you kind of nurture that side of things. And often, yeah, it does come in relation to other people. And particularly thinking about that sort of international thing, I've noticed an evolution in myself and my family of being, introducing sort of British foods, or like things that we particularly like to eat, or songs or stories or rituals and things that when we first moved here, I think it was just such a culture shock in a way that I was just almost not trying to be Dutch, but sort of thinking that integration meant adopting these Dutch things. And it does to a certain extent. And I love to do that, but also to be able to tell and share with my kids the British identity that is very core to me as well. And sort of having both of those things live alongside each other.
It'll, it's just, I think, trying to find those people, I think has been the hardest thing, I think, for many of us as well.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, if there's anyone out there who wants to do some rug making and has got some Irish kids who want to babysit my child as well to get some Irish language into them, just get in touch. Dr. Naomi, thank you so much as always for joining us.
Thank you.
It's been another insightful and free therapy session for anyone out there. Hopefully you feel you've heard myself and Maren share our own personal experiences, and also Dr. Naomi herself as well. We're giving you an insight and the truth, and being transparent as ourselves as mothers. So,
well, 2 years ago when this episode was first recorded, Matrescence still felt like a quiet, almost underground conversation. And yet here we are, and it still feels true, maybe even more so. I'm curious, listening now, can you hear yourself in this episode? Are you still stuck in that thick, disorientating part of the transition? Or are you further along, or a little steadier, a little clearer about who you are becoming? Sometimes we don't have the headspace to absorb something the first time we hear it. Sometimes we're too deep into survival, too tired and too overstimulated. And then months or maybe years later, a conversation can land differently. And that's why we occasionally bring archive episodes back. Not because we've run out of things to say, nope, but it's, well, basically because sometimes you're finally ready to hear them. Thank you to the many members of our village, the therapists, the community organizers, the birth workers, the language educators, the volunteers who continue to create spaces, places, and events for our little ones and for us to find sanctuary. Motherhood was never meant to be done in isolation. If this episode resonated with you, share it. Send it to a sister or a friend or a colleague or someone who's pregnant who thinks she'll be, able just to get on with it. The campaign to formally recognize the word matrescence will likely continue, and it matters because the transition into motherhood isn't it's not just having a baby. It's not just hormones. It's not just tiredness. It is a profound developmental experience for a human being. Episodes of Damn Parenting are out every Wednesday, and sometimes, when life gets in the way, we need reminders, or when one of you messages to say you found an old one that hit differently, an archive episode will return. Because growth isn't linear, and neither is motherhood. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.